Hey, good morning, girl. How are you doing today? I am doing just fine. I am feeling a little tired. I, uh, I, you know, wouldn't it be nice if we all could get as much sleep as we wanted all the time? And I guess on some level we can. Um, but it's kind of funny how late at night I don't make the best choices when it comes to falling asleep. I mean, I make good choices about my bedtime, but there are often so many competing interests. For example, I know that I'd like to go to bed, in about 30 minutes or an hour. And there's just something about whatever it is I'm doing that's magnetic and it keeps me engaged, right? Maybe I'm engaged with the computer or engaged with a video I'm watching or engaged with a book that I'm watching. And I'm just so engaged. I hate to break away so that I can fall asleep when I want to. And it's kind of funny when you're in the moment, completely engaged or engrossed in a book or a movie, you don't want to break away. And you say to yourself, yeah, I'm willing to exchange this pleasure uh, of the 30 minutes or an hour for 30 minutes or an hour of sleep. Yeah, I can do that. It's funny how you bargain with yourself, even though uh, it would make good sense uh, for you to hit the bed. I wonder what is all. I think there might be different factors that come into play. Maybe I bet you things like fatigue affect willpower, and that may be the constant interplay that we are dealing with every night when we're feeling a little bit tired and our willpower levels are low. It's at the end of the day, by the way. I've been hearing this theory about how willpower is a finite resource. And I don't know how true it is. It's in the, popular discourse right now. And this whole idea that the willpower is like a fixed value for any person, and that you might be able to exert your willpower in a powerful way 2 or 3 times during the day. But then once that willpower is expended, um, uh, it's not that useful anymore. And so you're sort of cast back to the winds, cast by the winds, cast by the waves. And, I don't know how true that is. I think wouldn't it be interesting if people had infinite willpower? I mean, what would that even look like? What would it look like if people had infinite willpower? What even is willpower? Here's the thing about life. There's a lot of competing values. I talk about baskets of values all the time. And a lot of those values are at loggerheads with one another. They are in conflict with one another. And that's just the natural state of values. If you think of a continuum, say from 0 to 1, and where 1 is a value and 0 is a value, there are intermediate places, intermediate graduations between those values logically, by necessity. And a lot of values are like that. And there are graduations, gradations between values. And it's also not clear, for human beings at least, to know sort of where to put your finger between the values. I mean, what is the threshold where the cutoff exists? Quite often there are no objective cutoffs. There are just sort of a subjective guesstimations about how you optimize the situation. And you can only optimize the situation according to a basket of values. And so, human beings can shift between baskets of values at will, and we do. That's how we. It's partly about how we create meaning. We've got all these stories running simultaneously about how we're preserving or conserving or optimizing certain sets of values. Life is confusing that way. So when it comes to matters of willpower, you're essentially having to come up with some kind of certain cutoff when you're analyzing to optimize your values. And there's a lot of uncertainty there. Yeah. Basically, what I'm saying is that life is a trade-off. And it's not just a single trade-off. It's a trade-off between literally hundreds of values. You're balancing your strengths and your weaknesses. And it's confusing. There's a lot of uncertainty. There are a lot of unknowns. What's kind of funny too is that human beings, we have a sense of what we want, but quite often, most of the time, we're not even sure about that. It's true. So there's a lot of uncertainty. And so, a lot of people struggle on account of this uncertainty. In fact, certainty is a value itself. And, I know a lot of people thrive to achieve it. And, that desire, that need for certainty shows up in people's lives in ways that are somewhat dysfunctional at times. In fact, a great way to bring more certainty into your life is to say no a lot. Because when you say yes, quite often, that starts a lot of uncertainty. But saying no, well, you pretty much know what you're getting when you say no. Well, not always, but sometimes you do. And so a lot of people say no a lot because it offers them certainty. Another thing that people do is they make judgments, which are essentially just claims. I think I know this. I think this is the way it ought to go. I think I want this. I think I don't want this. That's really what a judgment is. I'm guessing I might want this, so I'm going to call it good. That's my moral judgment. Or I'm guessing I don't want this, so I'm going to call it bad. Right? And here's the thing. People can be mistaken about what they want. People can be mistaken, not only can they be mistaken about what they want, but when they make decisions to pursue what they want, they may find that those predictions aren't accurate. That is predictions about, say, outcomes, about relating to the decisions they make. So human beings are bad at predicting the future. It's so funny. The poor brain struggles. The poor brain struggles in this stream of life. I think there's this metaphor that comes to mind about people just flowing down a river. And I'm sure there are a lot of stories, but I do like to think of a person sort of flowing through time as they are floating down a river, say maybe in an inner tube or something like that. It's very much like that. And we're all sort of flowing down the same river. People are showing up and then they're going away. It's a great metaphor. And I think it's a metaphor for change, how change is continual. It's a story, this idea or this metaphor about floating down a river is essentially a story about that describes the change in people's lives and how it's continual. Just think of one way to reduce certainty is to, I know there's this idea and an ideal of romantic relationships that last a lifetime. And it's been my experience that no relationship lasts a lifetime. Not one. And it may be the case that even if two people spend their lives together or a lot of time together, it may be the case that they are in physical proximity with one another. But I can assure you that at times the relationship doesn't exist other than beyond a cool friendship. It's kind of funny. Our minds are shifting and changing like sands of the desert. I know. It's continual. Speaking of change, I'm looking forward to a change in the season. I'd like it to be a little warmer. Although I appreciate this water that's falling from the sky. It's raining a lot here in California. There are reports of floods, I think, in Northern California and flooding in certain towns. And, lately I've been thinking to myself about how important metaphors are. And one metaphor I've been entertaining lately is this idea of water being life. Water is life. And I think that's true, certainly on land. Water is life. Water is a scarce resource. Why? Because water flows downhill. And pretty much, everywhere on every piece of terrestrial land on Earth, it's sloped in some way. It's not perfectly flat. So water flows, and it flows from point A to point B frequently, often through streams and rivers down to the ocean. And, well, the presence of water is fleeting. If you're in a place where there's water, be thankful because that water is on its way to some other place, some place where you are not. And so that makes, water in itself quite special. It's only here for a little while. And then who knows? It'll be gone someday, some months, some years. In California, I still think of California as being in a drought when we've been having a lot of rain lately. And I'm so glad. I think that's, I don't know what the ultimate outcome of our climate is, but I think it's going to be sort of a Mediterranean/desert climate here on the central coast of California. I think that's what we're slated to become. And so I'm really thankful to be receiving this gift of water from the planet, from the river, the atmospheric rivers that have been flowing our direction lately. I have a feeling that it may only be temporary. I think next year and subsequent years, it's going to be dry, real dry. Dry to the extent that we basically will fail to have trees anymore. I know, it'll become like a desert. We'll be able to grow yucca and cactus and yeah, all kinds of, maybe the saguaro cactus will come to Santa Barbara County. Doubtless that'll be eventually what'll happen here. Desertification, man, desertification. So the other day I was thinking of a news article that I read, and I just want to say first, let me mention about news articles in general. I'm struck by the low quality of news articles. I don't know if you've noticed this, Em. I think it's internet news. The other day I saw a news article. It had literally 2 paragraphs. The whole article was 2 paragraphs long. I know brevity is a virtue, I suppose. And on the internet, that is certainly the case. And it's kind of funny. I grow accustomed to a certain length of news article, and I expect it to be at least 2 pages long. A good 2 pages long. But I'm frequently reading articles that are a lot shorter than that. I think I might have even read 1 or 2 news articles recently that have just been 1 paragraph long. It's like, is this all there is? The caption or the title brought me in. I'm curious about a subject, and there is literally like 3 sentences. And the 3 sentences, if those 3 sentences were to provide information to satisfy my curiosity, then that would be wonderful. But that is almost always not the case. So I'm like, wow, this is an interesting question, an interesting idea. I read 3 sentences about it, and I'm still thinking, boy, this is a great idea, and I've learned very little about it. Then I'm off to seek another news article about that same topic. It's kind of funny. It's funny how standards are changing. Culture is changing. Yeah. And I don't know if you know this, culture is changing. As an old guy, as a bona fide blue ribbon old guy, I'm definitely noticing change happening in society and culture. Food is a really good example. In the past, it is true, I think, that people used to be satisfied with, like, if you made oatmeal cookies made from butter and oatmeal and sugar and vanilla extract and maybe some raisins, was good enough, right? It was good enough. In fact, those were great cookies. Very tasty, very wonderful. But today, we've got the Food Network, we've got celebrity chefs. Everyone's trying to ramp up the food. And food scientists are willing to oblige in essentially the gold rush to utilizing new chemicals and dyes and additives, preservatives to help make food even more wonderful. And it works. This food is amazing. Food has never tasted better than it tastes today. I could say that factually. Though it comes, well, and so this is precipitating lots of change in the food. People used to be satisfied about how oatmeal cookies came out just out of homemade oatmeal cookies just came out of the oven. Not anymore. Everybody's got to jack up or ramp up the flavor profiles, right? So we've got super sweet additives and super umami flavors. Everyone's adding like mushrooms to their oatmeal cookies to jack up that flavor. Who knows what they're adding, but it's working. Especially restaurants have been raising the bar. In the past, a lot of people ate at home. They prepared their own meals. They're relatively simple, Betty Crocker meals, right? Out of the Betty Crocker cookbook, maybe it had 5 or 10 ingredients max, right? And you pulled together what you could based on what you knew. And, maybe you'd been cooking for your whole life, but you hadn't been professionally trained. You don't have vast depth, vast research and knowledge of academia backing your your baked goods, and that people were satisfied. But today, with how available amazing foods are from these huge companies that, I don't know, just make available every resource to improve how food tastes, its presentation, how quickly it is prepared, the quality of foods have been improved. I mean, the standards now that people have for food are just out through the roof. And hey, I appreciate that. That's wonderful. I mean, it's great to live in a world with food standards so high. And particularly when it comes to flavor and nutrition, I mean, it's a real benefit, a boon for everybody, and I'm glad for it. Though it's causing changes, disruptions. I see a disruption in the force. Yeah, and so tastes are changing, and the regular oatmeal cookie of old, the regular piece of cornbread of old, is just not cutting it. It's pretty funny. So yeah, a lot of it has to do with just being satisfied from the products you make in your kitchen. So anyway, I think maybe what's going on with me right now? That's always an interesting question for me to ask when I'm talking to you, man, because these videos are about today. They're about now, the power of now. Okay, so this evening I have an exciting plan. I'm going to go to Allen Hancock College. There's going to be a debate of Cal Poly professors about artificial intelligence. And so I'm stoked to go check it out. I'm so glad that I've got some time and the energy and the interest level to go check it out. I'm interested in making connections with other people who might be in the Allen Hancock College Science and Engineering Club. I have been a member of that club, at least on Facebook, for a while. I've not gone to any of their meetups, but I'm excited to get to know them because I am a little bit nerdy when it comes to science, to say the least. And I want to find my clan. I want to find my tribe when it comes to my science peeps. Who are my science peeps out there? I can talk engineering and genetics and science and artificial intelligence, autonomous vehicles, robotics, mechatronics. I want to know who those people are. I want to find them. So I'm excited about learning about AI and making some connections out there. So I'll be doing that tonight. Definitely excited about that. Let's see what else is going on with me. I don't know. I missed a workout yesterday. I know. I can't believe it. It was the first workout that I truly missed in like 2.5 weeks. I'll make it up on Friday, which is tomorrow. And I think I'll probably start working out early in the morning and I'll get all prepared. I'm excited to do my taxes tomorrow. I'm excited that pretty much by tomorrow, I'll have most of my taxes done, which is early, which is fantastic. And I want to get those knocked out as soon as possible. It's the responsible thing to do. So I'm glad I'm pursuing that activity. Anything else going on? Yeah, I'm still thinking about what I'm going to be doing this weekend. I'm not entirely sure yet. I'm still formulating the ideas. I think I might go down to Los Angeles. There's this movie that I've been meaning to watch. It's showing in just a limited number of theaters. And not only that, but it's showing at a theater that I've heard good reviews about. Just the place, right? I hear it's a really cool theater. And I also hear that they make amazing popcorn. And believe it or not, it's true. I'm an aficionado of popcorn. I'm a big popcorn lover. And pretty much here's the real story. The real story is I'm going to a theater in Los Angeles because I've heard they have great popcorn. And I want to go eat that popcorn. That's right. I'm going to drive 2.5 hours, 3 hours to go to this movie theater that has great popcorn. And then I'm going to drive 3 hours back. So 6 hours of driving to sample some of the best popcorn and movie popcorn in Southern California. I know. I do this all the time. So I'm excited to do my 6 hours of driving to get my bucket of popcorn at the movie theater. That's really why I'm going. So I don't know if there's anything you love enough to do something like that. I know that people have fixations on things like chocolate or fruit or kale. I don't know, farmers markets, right? Give me a nice big bowl of movie popcorn. I'm good to go. So that's fine. I'll be able to get to see a movie. I might even go to like Universal Studios while I'm there, something like that. Explore LA. There's a lot to explore in that big old city. So I've also been thinking about going to this. I think it's called the Central Market. It's a place where people can buy food, and it looks pretty neat. I've seen some interesting videos of it. I might check it out. Go see some food vendors down in LA. So that might be an exciting, interesting thing to do. One additional thing that's really been on my mind that I've been passionate about lately, I'm struggling to make time in my schedule for, is planning. Okay, so here's the thing. I love planning. Actually, I love planning. I just don't do it that often. And I want to do more of it. And I think my life will really come together if I do a better job planning. So I got this new iPad Pro, right? I've been raving about it the last few weeks. One thing I've noticed is that I'm enjoying this writing app. The title of it doesn't come to mind immediately, but it's a note-taking app. I think it's called Notability. Yeah. And turns out that I'm really enjoying using this note-taking app while listening to music on my iPad. And not only do I listen to music, but I pull up a secondary app, Google Calendar, while I'm taking these notes, right? While I'm doing my planning. So I'm listening to music and I'm looking at my calendar and I'm taking notes, and it's working. What's working? Well, I'm doing planning. I'm planning out my day. I'm planning out my hours. I'm planning out my weekends, and I'm doing it. I'm adding reminders and to-do list items to my calendar, and I'm enjoying the process, listening to music, building playlists, having fun. So for me, what's special about this is that I'm combining planning, which is eminently useful in my life, and I'm combining with that with listening to music, which is eminently enjoyable, pleasurable, right? So the utility and the pleasure of the planning on the iPad, something I've kind of discovered, and I'm loving it. I'm loving it right now, and I'm really looking forward to doing some planning, maybe even today if I'm lucky. Hey, if I'm lucky today, maybe I'll do some planning. Maybe I'll do some planning today. Keep that on the down low. It's a secret. Now, here's the thing. I want to plan more often. Planning makes sense. It's helpful. It's interesting. It's useful. And here's the thing. I'm only really good at planning things 1, 2, 3 days in advance. When Miguel plans something a week in advance, that is something special. When he plans something a month in advance, that is something super special. For some reason, I'm challenged. Mentally challenged. I'm mentally challenged when it comes to planning anything. And it's more than 3 days away. Why is that? I'm not sure. I'm doing better. It used to be, once upon a time, it used to be that I wouldn't plan anything unless it was the same day or maybe the next day, and then I would begin planning. So I'm doing better. Take a breath. I'm doing better. I'm able to plan something 3 days in advance, and maybe I'm shooting for being able to plan things on a regular basis 7 days in advance. I know. A man can dream. Wish upon a star. And so, I'm looking forward to spending more time planning and having it be fun. For me, there's always risk about planning into the future. I could always get sick or get injured or have to bow out of one thing as some activity, which is higher priority, butts in to my schedule. And I'm not necessarily a fan of recalibrating, basically renegotiating agreements with people. When I say I'm going to be somewhere at a certain time, for me, as part of my personality, my perfectionist personality, I want to be there on time. And so it bothers me a little bit. I don't quite like to renegotiate agreements when it comes to appointment times. So maybe that's just something I have to work on, right? Maybe I just need to explore what it is to renegotiate with someone else. And then that will give me the courage. Once I've sort of developed a skill related to renegotiating my agreements, relating to my schedule, maybe I'll just be able to plan more in the future. All right, so here are some questions. Let's start up the question and answer period. And I'll just read off a few questions and let's see what my answers are. So question number 242. When you fly, do you prefer to arrive at the airport extra early or get there just in the nick of time, and why? Okay, I'm a person who likes to get there early, super early, an hour. In fact, getting to an airport an hour early is mind-numbingly late for me. For me, it's 2 hours, 3 hours. I've been to airports 4 hours and maybe even 5 hours early. Why? Because for me, it's just better to settle in, read a book, spend time on my laptop or whatever, on my cell phone, maybe buy a magazine, maybe buy a snack, and just hang out at the airport, even for a couple hours before my flight. Why? I don't know. I have this concern about being on time to my flight. I have been, I don't think I've ever missed a flight, but I think I've been awful close to missing a flight. And the experience was sufficiently rattled me that I do not like to be late for flights. Yeah. All right. So that's my preference. I do go early, especially now. Okay. Question number 243. Whom do you most admire and why? So I might have answered this question before, but basically right now, if you were to ask me that question, my answer would be Albert Einstein. I know you might ask why. Well, first of all, I appreciate Einstein's genius and his modesty at the same time. I also am an admirer of his stance on pacifism and nuclear war at the time. A kind of war that in some ways he made possible through his understanding of and invention in physics. I also admire him for the struggles that he must have gone through. I think he was alienated from 2 of his children. I think he had 2 kids in Germany with his former wife. And I think he was separated from them for a long time, and I can relate to him on that level. So that's who I most admire. And I also admire, just how much of a struggle it must have been for him. So I relate to Mr. Albert Einstein, at least on those levels. Next question number 244. What bothers you most about perfectionists? Well, perfectionism by definition is about having very high standards and trying to achieve those standards. So as you can tell, I appreciate perfectionism, but there's a trade-off. There's a point of diminishing returns. I think it's that point of diminishing returns aspect that I wouldn't say I'm bothered by, but I acknowledge in perfectionists, and I think can be improved, right? So the idea is that a lot of energy is expended to sort of achieve a certain value where the gains received in exchange for that energy are small. So it's that law of diminishing returns. And perfectionists are great at expending tons of needless energy to achieve goals, to achieve standards that are also unnecessary. you know, it's essentially a desire for order in the world, right? It's a desire for certainty. It's a desire for precision. And I don't know, perfectionists can expend a lot of energy in those directions with little to show for it. And so it's inefficient. Perfectionism is inefficient, almost by definition. So I think of I actually follow YouTube content creators. And some of the ones that I follow most dependably are what I'd call like study tubers. Now, study tubers are people who continuously develop their studying skills, their ability to review and memorize information, usually in some kind of school or college setting. And why do I appreciate and enjoy these study tubers? Well, I don't know why, but I think partly it is because I want to improve my own ability to study and to sort of assimilate information, and I have a real strong desire to do that, and I want to learn from them. But I'm also finding out that these are people who spend a lot of time trying to ensure that they get the right grade letter on their essay or their book reports or their math assignments or their chemistry assignments. They spend an undue amount of time memorizing minutia so that they can perform well on exams. Like, they can get A+ on every paper or every exam. And so they spend a lot of time. It's a time sink, right? And, when it comes to time for everything that you're doing in an allotted time, that means by definition, you're not doing something else. And so, I acknowledge that a lot of these study tubers, their lives are somewhat out of balance in the sense that they spend a lot of time reading textbooks and probably not enough time in the gym, probably not enough time socializing with friends, and probably not enough time doing other things that would bring them joy and contentment. They're focused on ensuring that they get a good grade. So I think that is definitely a kind of perfectionism. And I think it can be somewhat insidious. I know I admire them for the efforts that they put forward, for their determination and really their courage to make the choices that they do. And, I hope to learn from them and maybe even emulate them in some way. But I do recognize that it can be a rather inefficient way of living in the sense that, you devote your time to minutia. Maybe a B is good enough, right? For this class that may only be partially applicable to your future. It may even be a class that's not applicable to your future. And when a B would be perfectly satisfactory. But I think for these study tubers anyway, they've got high personal standards when it comes to, test taking and reading their textbook, and, there's virtue in that activity. There's strength of character. It's a real challenge. Not everyone can do it. It's actually, I think that everyone can do it, but not everyone chooses to do it. And I admire them for their choice, for their stance. And, I think these are, at least for me, these are virtues that I like to emulate more. And I mean, it's not that I don't have, that I'm not sort of meeting my standards. I mean, I am. Pretty much every class I take at university, I get A's in. And a lot of that is because I'm a mature student and I've got a lot of skills related to the understanding of, related to memorization and all kinds of, I'm aware of a lot of memorization techniques, and I do try to spend time thinking about my classes. I don't know. I'm always developing, unfolding, and evolving, and when it comes to school. Speaking of school, I also get off topic quite often. Speaking of school, something exciting happened yesterday. Last night at Allen Hancock College, I took my welding class, and I was there for my welding class anyway, and we learned how to MIG weld. MIG, metal inert gas welding. And so exciting. I've got photographs of it, and I'm going to send you some photographs maybe tomorrow or the next day, maybe Saturday. I'll send you some photos and even a video of me welding. I am excited about acquiring that new skill. Not that I'm very good at it. In fact, I just did it for the first time yesterday, and it is a rather easy skill, I would guess, compared to oxyacetylene torch welding or oxy-fuel welding. But anyway, that's something I'm definitely excited about. All right, let's see what the next question is in our question and answer session. Question number 245. How do you prefer to give constructive criticism? Do you typically wait for someone to ask for it or not? Why? Okay, I do typically wait for someone to ask for constructive criticism, but at times I will just launch into a volley of constructive criticism, and I do make strenuous efforts to ensure that my criticism is constructive every time. I tend to be somewhat forthcoming about constructive criticism, and at least at times when it comes to certain subjects. Now, yeah, I recognize that people's performance and behavior is based on a lot of factors, and sometimes people just aren't interested in, say, optimizing their performance. It happens all the time. People prioritize their days, their lives, and maybe there are times when people just aren't interested in criticism. They're fine with the way things are going. And I can, not only can I relate to that, but I certainly accept that that's the case. The desire for continual improvement is, it's in some personalities, but not all of them, right? And that's perfectly okay. Some people just have a stronger desire for growth and change and improvement than others, and we can't always continually be improving in every area of our life. It's just not feasible. And so we've got to prioritize our energy, and so, I try to make comments at times when I think that those comments will be accepted. And I try to make those comments as positive and constructive as possible. And I think I really go to extraordinary lengths sometimes to ensure that. Basically what I do is I try to frame my constructive criticism in terms of satisfying the other person's needs. And I think that works a lot. It works pretty well. I would use a construction like, if you want to connect with your audience, then you might choose this behavior instead of another. So that's typically the format that I use when I do constructive criticism. And that tends to work, because then it's not so much me, right? It's not so much, not so much Miguel's opinion satisfying his own needs, sort of the need to be right or the need to be better than other people. I'm sort of working in partnership with the other person to helping them get their needs met and their audience's needs met, right? So it's sort of what I'd call an empathic way to criticize. Is there such a thing? I don't know. So, all right, let's move on to the next question. I think we're done with those questions. I've been reading this book. I've actually today. I finished a book that I was reading. The book is called The Power of Patience by MJ Ryan. I've been following MJ Ryan lately. I've been reading like 3 or 4 or 5 of her books recently. I just finished one this morning, and I finished the book, The Power of Patience. We'll go through it one of these days, if I could ever get through the Happiness Makeover notes. All right. So, boom, 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 boom. Boom, 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 boom. Okay, here we go. So here are some highlights that I highlighted in the book, The Happiness Makeover by MJ Ryan. And this highlight is on page 25, and the highlighted passage reads, "You create problems so that you can feel that life is great work, a growth, and you have to struggle hard." Osho. So if you would have told me this quote, say, a year ago, I wouldn't have believed you. You create problems so that you can feel that life is a great work, a growth, and you have to struggle hard. So I have been recognizing in other people this narrative, this theme. I guess it's a narrative theme, and that is that you have to struggle in order to grow. That in order to make progress, there's a trial that you have to live through. And I am a firm believer that people really believe this. And I'm a firm believer that pretty much 80% of the time, it's not true. In fact, when I notice it when other people speak, I'm a little bothered by it, to tell you the truth. And so here's the idea. The idea is that somehow there needs to be a trial, there has to be some kind of yelling involved. Maybe not. There has to be some kind of struggle in order to achieve a certain goal, right? There has to be a struggle. And I'm recognizing that this is just a story. It's sort of like the hero's story, the hero's journey. It's some mythical storyline that the ancients came up with about how change happens and how a person is rewarded, right? Personally, what I'm believing now is that change is easy. People can make a decision in the moment to smoke or not to smoke, to drink or not to drink. Those probably are bad examples, but they can make choices about eating, how much sugar that they eat, or how much exercise that they do, or how well they check grammar in their writing assignments at school. And, I think there's this idea, this notion, and I think it's fallacious, that there needs to be this grand struggle, this grand battle uh, that a person needs to go through in order to make any kind of improvement or change or make growth happen. That somehow they've got to experience pain or suffering or struggle in some way in order to make progress. And I'm here to say that I don't think that's true. Making decisions is effortless. It's purely effortless. And in fact, I make decisions all the time. Like in the last 1 minute, how many decisions have I made? I bet you in the last 1 minute, I've probably made 10 or 20 decisions. I've made decisions about word choice. I've made decisions about nonverbal presentation. I've made choices about planning and what comes next. I've made a lot of choices, and I've done it rather effortlessly. I mean, I've been talking here with you this whole time, and you probably have not noticed, at least from your vantage point, the kind of thoughts in my head about how I prefer to make my presentation. I'm making decisions all the time. In fact, human brains make decisions. From them, it's normal and natural and rather effortless, right? There's a balance that I'm trying to strike between certain values about flow, rhythm, meaning, and I'm continually making decisions. Human brains make decisions all the time. It's natural and it's normal. And I make decisions to change all the time. So what I'm suggesting is that this happens most of the time. 80% of the time, people make decisions in a thoughtless way, right? And it's easy, right? There's a lot of ease associated with these kind of decisions. I think most decisions are that way. Now, some decisions people do agonize over. And for me, it's not even clear whether that agonizing helps. I don't think it's necessarily clear. I mean, it may help in a minority of problems. But getting to the point is this idea that that there has to be some kind of struggle, that you have to go through this ordeal in order to make change happen, to make growth happen. It's not the case. I think even when it comes to personal growth, a lot of people, I count myself as a person who's a personal growther. That means that I'm continuously interested in self-development, self-growth. I'm continuously interested in transforming into something that's better, or a better version of myself, or optimized. Optimizing my life using tips and tricks and hacks and all this stuff. And, for me, a lot of it is somewhat effortless because I've been doing it for so long. But I think that for others, there is a sense that they need to be like coached, right? And then the coach has to be harsh in some way. The coach, oh, that's a tough coach. I want a coach like that. Personally, I withdraw from coaches like that that use a lot of, say, judgment in their training and in their teaching. Now, here's the thing: a lot of people make change happens because they learn. They learn new things about, say, the consequences of their behavior. Like, oh, I didn't fully appreciate the consequences of my behaviors. Oh, well, that going to make it easier for me to change. And then they do. So a person didn't change necessarily because they were berated by a coach who was hard, right? Or tough coach. I think that that's a rather disempowering image to have regarding your own personal growth. This idea that somehow you need a taskmaster not that you want one, but that you need a taskmaster in order to grow to the next level or make improvements in your life. To me, it doesn't make any sense. A a lot of the times I make decisions and changes in my behavior based on simply an acknowledgement or an appreciation of facts around me. For me, it's a learning experience, and learning is often enjoyable, right? I see connections between, say, one thing and another. Maybe I hadn't made that integration before. The integration came to me in a flash where my brain connected or matched up to events. And that new understanding made the change easier. In fact, it was necessary. The change after that understanding became appreciated. Then the decision to change was effortless. And I think that happens most of the time. So I'm definitely not an advocate of, say, the taskmaster, the hardcore coach, doing a lot of yelling and controlling. I'm not sure what draws people to that subculture of coaching, but there must be some idea about how change can only happen in the midst of hardship and toil and emotional pain, and I think it's tragic. It's tragic. For me, change and transformation happens effortlessly. But for others, in order for that change to be meaningful or to be appreciated, it must be accompanied by some kind of physical pain or emotional pain. And it saddens me that people believe that. I think that in itself is a loss. Now, that's not to say that I've never benefited from someone's harsh treatment, and that is, for they're trying to help me act in my own best interests. I have benefited from coaching of that sort before, but I think it can also be counterproductive. Yeah. Well, here's why. Quite often, there's this, what I'd call this dynamic, this power over dynamic that is created in situations like that. And I think power over dynamics are often not helpful. Anyway, I haven't yet gotten, I guess that was the first quote in MJ Ryan's book, The Happiness Makeover. Anyway, there was so much meat in that one that I really enjoyed talking about it. Let me just repeat that passage again. It says, "You create problems so that you can feel that life is a great work, a growth, and you have to struggle hard." So I didn't address the part of the quote that relates to this idea of me creating problems. Me creating problems. Maybe I'll address that later, because I do want to wrap up this presentation. We can talk about me creating problems later on. I laugh because I do create all kinds of problems for myself, and I do so by my own free will. And it's kind of funny. Maybe I do that because I'm interested in challenging, or I'm confident in my ability to manage the change in behavior down the road in the future. Anyway, I want to let you know that I love you. I want to reiterate that I care for you, and I think that our relationship is important. So much so that I'm willing to expend time, energy, and money to protect and preserve and serve our relationship as it is. I'm interested in making improvements in it every day, deepening our mutual understanding, strengthening our ability to work in partnership with one another. I am hopeful that in the future we can find mutuality in our values and in our ideas, in our desires and goals, and what you think is important to me, the thoughts, the ideas, the moods that you're in, the things that you enjoy. It's important to me that you do things that you enjoy. It's important to me that you hang out with your friends. It's important to me that you do things that are happiness producing, that you play, that you have fun, that you get a good night's rest. These are all things that are important to me. And that I will, in fact, I am committed to working in your best interests, and doing so to the best of my ability. I'm interested in supporting you and your long-term self-interest, and whatever you believe that is to be. And so anyway, I just want to let you know that I'm here to work with you in partnership, and that, in order, communication is the way to make this partnership effective. And I just want to emphasize and advocate the utility of communication between us. And I also want to give you the freedom to say no to communication if that's not what you prefer in the moment. And I want you to know that I'm okay with that. Perfectly okay with that. I recognize that you are in the driver's seat when it comes to your life. And I want you to let you know that I am standing by here on the sidelines, willing to offer assistance or contribution in any way that I can. And I want you to know that I'm continually trying to come up with ways to make a contribution, a positive contribution in your life. And I just want you to acknowledge that. Or I just want you to know that. You don't have to acknowledge that. I wanted to say it myself. It's part of my role as a father and as your creator. I'm so modest sometimes. I admit that is an exaggeration. Anyway, it was fun. It was fun to say. Anyway, Emily, I hope you have a wonderful day today. I hope you have a wonderful week and a truly enjoyable weekend. I'm already myself planning my weekend, and I hope to reap and squeeze as much joy and appreciation out of my weekend as possible. And I hope that you do the same. So with that, I'm going to close and say that I love you. Bye-bye, girl. Peace. And have a wonderful day.